All right, guys, welcome back to our podcast, Legacy of Lies. We're super happy to have you here again for the second episode. We're going to switch it up a little bit on this one. We're going to go more into mysteries, and I'll have my co-host Pat here tell you about what we're going to do.
All right. Thanks, Gabe. Yeah, so obviously, Gabe and I looking at what we want to talk about, and the list is very long. There's plenty of mysteries in the world. And really the first thing that kind of jumped out at me, or one that piques my interest, is the mystery surrounding national forests and national parks. So we could probably spend several hours talking about all these mysteries, but really, before we get into it, I'm kind of curious, Gabe, what are your thoughts? Do you have any, right away, what you think about what's going on with, whether it be Bigfoot or missing persons or, just in general, do you have some thoughts on it?
It's such a wide topic, and there's been so many different people that have all had their say on like what they think it is, right? Like, you have like the David Paulides side that, and even he isn't like super nailed down on one thing. He kind of leaves it open to like, oh, it could be Bigfoot, could be feral humans. Like, he's got all these different ideas. And then you obviously have like the UFO side of the equation, and there's people that go that route. If I had to guess, I would say a lot of it is probably natural. Like 90% of it is like mountain lions, people just disappearing while they're hiking. But it's the same thing for me with the overall UFO argument, is that 5-10% that just like can't be proven, that they've never been able to explain away. There's no reason why these people should be gone. That's where my interest lies. And like, if I had to guess on those, like, I definitely think, like, I believe in Bigfoot personally, but I don't believe in Bigfoot in a traditional sense that like a lot of people think there's like just this like
hairy beast.
Yeah, like a hairy beast legacy ape in the woods from millennia ago. I think that it's probably a metaphysical thing. Either has something to do with UFOs or is more like a spiritual kind of like Garter of the Woods style entity.
Yeah, it's really cool. And we'll kind of go into a couple of numbers here too, but I thought it'd be a good idea to, maybe just spitball what our ideas are. And I think I'm in the same boat as you. I don't know that I have, because we've heard them all, not just Bigfoot, but missing people. And you hear all these things. We were talking earlier about the feral people, and it's one that I almost kind of forgot about. But that one, when you hear like an account from people who have seen this, it's like one of those things that kind of makes you shit your pants, that there's like this own little society or a family that they've created out in the woods.
Some hills have eyes shit.
Like,
And I mean, it's crazy.
It really is. But, when it boils down to, I think for me is kind of what you were talking about, metaphysical, interdimensional. I don't think it's an actual hairy ape in the woods.
Right.
Even though people get these smells and all that stuff, I think there's a lot about dimensional stuff that we just don't know or we can't explain because it's, maybe we're not capable right now. So,
right.
But yeah, kind of big picture. I believe in that stuff. I believe people see things. Again, I also, like you, I think a lot of people go missing because, they do stupid shit. They climb hills they shouldn't climb.
Right.
They don't prepare themselves for, going in this, they don't understand what thousands of acres are. You know what I mean? They think it's the woods in their small hometown.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these people are like city people or people that don't go out and hike regularly. And those are the exact kind of people that underestimate the wilderness.
Right.
But when the media or you hear about this story a year later or whatever, they don't tell you that part. Right. So you have to take that into account. I think that like some of the stuff definitely could be natural, but like when, like, say you're the person who went missing, say you're that person's like aunt and you're talking to the media like a year later, you're not going to be like, oh yeah, well, she was kind of a dumbass. Like, she didn't know how to hike. She wasn't very directionally inclined. Like, you're going to be like, I have no idea why my, relative went missing. And so it's hard to take some of that stuff like at face value when, coming from, a family that we've always hunted, fished, been outside our whole life. Like, we kind of know. And I think the more that your family and you grow up around that stuff, you have a healthy respect for like how easy it is to get lost in woods you don't know, how easy it is to trip, hurt your ankle, and if you don't have cell service or like one of those SOS beacons, like you're screwed. I mean, the people that have more experience with that, those are the people that generally like know what that means, like how dangerous that is. And it's when those kind of people go missing out there that I really take notice.
Yeah.
Because that's the stuff where it's like they should know better. I kind of am giving them the benefit of the doubt, right?
That's kind of what I was going to say. Very similar. People, a lot of these people you hear, the stories after the fact, you'll hear this person, they could hike 40 miles and they could do all this crazy stuff. But, that's physical endurance, and congratulations, good for you. That's awesome. But navigating like woods like that, I mean, even for our family who hunts, fishes, all that stuff, spend time in the woods, you definitely gain a respect for directions.
Yeah.
And that, that's something I guess you can learn over time, but it's also something that can like bite you in the ass. It can sneak up on you really fast because you're, whatever, let's just say they're using a GPS or they have a map marked up. Maps probably not so much these days anymore. Most people GPS. Right. But if that fails, if your battery dies, or if you, make misjudgment on your map, everything looks the same,
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that's probably, like we were talking about, that's probably a big account for all these folks that go missing.
Yeah. Well, when you get into like dense forest cover, that's what a lot of people don't know if they don't hike a lot or they don't hunt. Like, it's fairly easy to tell what direction to go based on the sun when you can see the sky. If
Right.
you're in, the Great North Woods and all it is thousands of acres of massive tree cover, you can't always tell where the sun is. Like, it's not that easy. So they say, oh, well, climb a tree. Well, you're alone in the woods. What if you hurt yourself? Like, there's so much more to think about other than just like the kind of metaphysical explanations for this. So I just think that it's important to take that into account, that when we talk about some of these things, we definitely want to give credence to the fact that some of the cases brought up, even in Polites stuff, may have natural explanations.
Yeah, for sure. When we started discussing this episode, and I've watched a lot of shows, some of them just for pure entertainment value, finding Bigfoot.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And this is very entertaining for me, but super intriguing. And so I thought, and maybe I'll share this audio file right now. I've never got to experience this, and I think I would want to, although maybe it would scare me. But the sound that Bigfoot supposedly makes. So let me run that audio clip right now, because this is so. For those of you who can't see my screen, which is everyone, this is a video. I think it's just several months old. And just to describe it ahead of time, it's a guy who's out in the woods. He's got 4 or 5 dogs. And you hear Bigfoot, or potentially Sasquatch Bigfoot, and just the way the reaction from his dogs kind of says it all. But here, I'll play this quick. I mean, that's Bigfoot not natural,
Yeah, even I'll tell you, even looking at the recording, like,
a lot about.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. Even looking at the recording, like, waveform as we record right now, like, that's absolutely terrifying. Like,
really?
That is so unbelievably loud compared to anything else you hear in the. I mean, you hear coyotes, howling in the woods, packs of coyotes. Sometimes you might hear a bobcat, and that's creepy, right? We've all heard that up here, but it's the waveform. It's just solid all across when you play that.
I
It's
never
weird.
thought of that. I'll have to check that out
Yeah.
after this. I never thought of that, like the scientific,
Right.
part behind it. But I was wrong. This guy has more like 8 dogs.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sound. I think there's the part of me. I'm curious about you too. There's a part of me that's like, I want to hear that. If that's real, I want to hear it. But then I think maybe I just want to hear it on a recording and not out in the woods,
Right.
What do you think? Would you want to experience that out there?
Am I alone? Am I unarmed? If I got my AR with me and a couple of buddies, or like me and you were out there and we're only like 50 feet from the truck, like maybe I'm cool with that. But, talking about like, the land we used to hunt on, if you're 150 acres deep on this huge, back hill and there's no way out other than back through the woods, probably not.
Yeah.
It's well, it's like when people ask you, like, everybody's super excited to see a UFO, right? Until they see one and they're alone.
Right.
And then people are like, though I hear this all the time with experiencers. They always say, like, I wish this never happened to me. It completely changed my life. And you hear that a lot with Bigfoot witnesses too. They're like, everybody thinks it'd be cool to see one, and then they do, and it is not what they think it's going to be.
Well, that's interesting to talk about, because if I were to, because we've seen crazy stuff together. You remember?
Oh, yeah.
A year ago, driving back from a different town, and we were talking about seeing lights in the sky, and then we saw that. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. I do remember that well.
And that's really cool. It's a cool experience, but who knows what it is? I mean, especially with drones and all that stuff. But I think the part that would be maddening is if you had an experience, if I had an experience where it's like I saw maybe more than a UFO, I saw little green men, or I saw, Pleiadians, or whatever the case is, you would have to talk to somebody about it. And the blowback that you could get from that would be maddening.
Right. I totally understand why people don't tell anyone when they see stuff, even minor stuff. Like, I mean, especially people are more open about it now, I think, than they probably were even 10, 20 years ago. But like, I understand because society, even now with UFOs being basically totally mainstream, like, you still get looked at weird.
Yeah.
Right. And you can tell, like, everybody knows somebody who's got like a crazy UFO story that people kind of look at sideways. And it's like that poor guy, if that really happened, this is the most traumatizing, insane thing that's ever happened to him or her in their life. And people just automatically on site don't take this person as seriously.
Yeah. Start gaslighting him and making him feel like a piece of shit.
Right.
Yeah.
It's actually really sad when you think about it.
It definitely makes me, question, if I had some profound experience that wasn't like, like the light that you and I saw. It's easy to tell that story.
Right.
I saw something I couldn't explain, but to tell something about, like, I had an alien come through the roof of my house.
Right.
I don't know if I would tell folks I don't know.
It's actually a really interesting topic. I was watching an interview the other day. I forget who the researcher was, but they were actually talking about exactly that, how when they interview people that are experiencers, like almost all the time in the interview, they'll say, I saw a light, I couldn't explain it, I saw X, Y, Z, I just don't know what it was. And then when they follow up with that person privately later, and they ask them, was there more to your experience that you didn't bring up? It was like 3/4 of the time the person was like, yeah, I actually saw insert something insane. And, I was just really embarrassed, or I wasn't confident enough to talk about it at the time. So there's this whole theory that some of this like crazier woo-woo stuff that people don't really like to talk about in mainstream, ufology is actually way more common than people think it is, because people are just so nervous to talk about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can get that.
Yeah, me too.
Some of the numbers that I looked up, and I had to write them down because I have terrible memory when it comes to numbers. But obviously, when I started doing a little bit of research on Bigfoot and, well, just parks in general.
Yeah.
The first thing, when you look up conspiracies or mysteries for national parks, Bigfoot's like a number one, right?
Right.
But the number of sightings in Washington state alone They have 700 recorded reports, mostly Mount Rainier and Olympic in the Olympic areas.
Which tracks pretty closely to where the Bigfoot stuff traditionally is, right? Like Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, yeah. And then the next one down is Yosemite in California. Yeah. So, yeah, that's cool. I mean, how many, I'm curious, and maybe I don't know, do you know how many, because I know I've heard of it. So we're in Wisconsin. Are there a lot of sightings around us?
Locally? I wouldn't say a lot in relation to like out west, right? Like in the Pacific Northwest, even in like Appalachia, there's a ton. Around here, we definitely have some, but it's not to that extent. But there's actually websites. Maybe you could pull it up on your iPad, possibly. But there's, it's like BigfootTracker.org or something. There's a couple different websites that's all they do is they track, and it's what the guys that had that Finding Bigfoot show, Matt, that guy actually started one of those websites, and I forget what the name of it was, and they have it by state. And I remember I looked a few times, and there was several dozen, if not hundreds, in Wisconsin over the last like 40 years.
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to talk about because I mean, obviously, you find more in places with more heavily wooded areas typically, like
right.
You're not going to have as many, and there is some, but you're not going to have as many in like North Dakota or
the Great Plains,
right? And you need a good mix of having actually enough people that go into the woods too, and having that woods, or places that are super sparsely populated but they don't have a lot of people, you're obviously not going to have as many reports either.
And I think that's something to think about too. So because our population's low in Wisconsin.
Right.
But look, I think weather probably plays a part in that too. I mean, I know that they deal with some extreme weather, but I mean, we can have, 40 below is not unheard of.
No.
I wouldn't want to live here. I'd move to, I'd move to the Appalachians too if I were Bigfoot.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about both of those regions is they're both very temperate. Like, they might have a winter, but it's not in any way savage like it can be up here, where, I mean, you can have 75% of any given species die off in a year if it's a really bad winter up here. So, if like talking like biologically, if you are going on the argument that Bigfoot is just a standard biological animal, that would make sense that's where the biggest populations would be.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's a good point. I'm glad you said that because... And then weather would have really no bearing, right? If it were, interdimensional or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
That's a good point. What was that site called or something like it?
I cannot remember. It was like,
it's
the Finding Bigfoot guy, Matt. That dude, Matt Moneymaker, I think his name is. Right. It's his website. So I'm sure if you just put that in Google, you'll find whatever it's called. That's been a long time since I've really dived deep here.
You're talking the Bigfoot BFRO?
Yeah, Bigfoot Research Organization.
Over 100 reported sightings in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So that's not nothing.
No. I mean, you think about how sparsely populated. I mean, we've both spent tons of time in the North Woods. Like, there's not a lot of people up there, man. Like, the biggest towns are sometimes like maybe 1,000, 1,200 people. And then there's 20 miles where there's nothing except like 4 bars and a snowmobile trail. It's pretty much the whole northern part of Wisconsin.
That's crowded.
Yeah, that's the city people, dude.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, or do you want to, kind of transition into the missing 411 phenomenon?
Yeah, the Pilates stuff.
Yeah. You brought him up already, so.
Yeah, I love his stuff, man. But I kind of give a little bit of a rundown for people that aren't super familiar with David Pilates. He's done tons of different, he has like, it's almost like a franchise. He calls it Missing 411, and he'll focus on different aspects of people going missing for different reasons. And he did one not that long ago that was really centered around national parks. And he touched on a lot of the cover-up aspects as well, because it's really common for people to go missing in national parks. One of the most common places for people to just fall off the map ever, which I mean, it's understandable in a way because these places are, some of the last remaining like truly wild places in the country, right? But he always focuses on ones there. It's like this dude was a 20-year outdoorsman, peak physical fitness. This guy like knew what he was doing out there. He had all the equipment he needed. And then I remember specifically one, the guy was out hunting with his buddies out in the deep woods right next to a national park. And they had split up, and his buddies went back to get him at the end of the day when the hunt was over. And it basically said that that guy was supposed to come back and meet them, and he didn't show up. So they went out looking for him, and they didn't find him. They found his boots and his rifle just sitting by a tree, and not him. And they never saw the guy again.
God, that's, just think for his for his friends, who found him.
Right. Yeah.
Like when you think of tragedies or missing people or, death or whatever the case is, you want some sort of closure. That would, how old was the guy?
I don't remember exactly. I want to say it was like late 40s. He
mean,
wasn't like
his parents
super
were
old.
probably alive,
Yeah.
How terrible, like if you lost a family member, it's all tragedy, right? You don't want to lose anybody, but if there is a vehicle accident and maybe somebody smoked in, you got some place to direct your blame or your energy.
Yeah.
This would be maddening, to have no explanation.
Yeah, you never get any closure ever. I mean,
Ugh.
and you're always going to just constantly wonder what happened. Like if it were me, if it were my family member, I feel like I would just be in the woods all the time. Just look, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
I would just never stop looking because you're always going to think there's always going to be a part of your brain that's going to be like, I need to give my son or my dad or whoever it is peace. Like I got to find the body. I'd probably drive myself insane, honestly, if it were me. But
Yeah. I'd do that for my dog.
no shit.
Yeah, that'd be tough. Hey, I got this video for him, and
Yeah.
it's a long video. We don't have to watch or listen to it all, but let me pull this up. It's kind of the intro, anyways, just to give people an idea of this guy.
Oh, it's just like a rundown of Pilates, or
It's him revealing proof about what Bigfoot really is.
oh, cool.
But it's 20 minutes long, so we'll just start it and we can kill it whenever we feel like it.
right on.
Bigfoot be a fallen angel? Well, one of the things that really isn't talked a lot about Bigfoot, but I ask often, is why is Bigfoot restricted from coming in contact with us?
A former homicide detective collected hair samples from something living in the forests of Northern California. He sent them to a genetics lab. The mitochondrial DNA came back human, but the paternal side, the nuclear DNA, matched nothing. Not human, not any known primate, not a single species in GenBank's entire database. After nearly 20 years of investigation, David Paulides says he knows what Bigfoot really is. And it's not an ape. The detective's method. Picture a guy who spent 20 years in law enforcement. SWAT operations, complex criminal investigations, homicide cases where the difference between a conviction and a cold file comes down to how carefully you read the evidence. That's David Paulides.
So for the next 2 years, I spent 50% of my life going there and interviewing Native Americans, locals who had encounters.
And when he retired, he didn't pick up golf. He picked up the strangest cold case in American history. Most Bigfoot researchers show up with night vision cameras and enthusiasm. Paulides showed up with interrogation techniques, chain of custody protocols, and the same methodical patience that closes murder investigations. No assumptions, no desired outcome. Just evidence, patterns, and wherever those patterns lead. His investigation started on the Hoopa Valley Indian Reservation in Northern California, an area dense with old-growth forest and sightings that go back generations. The tribal members there didn't treat Bigfoot like a mystery. They treated it...
I don't know how long you want to keep going
No,
with
yeah.
it, but
I think that's a good intro for just kind of generally who he is too. Like I kind of had forgotten that he was involved in SWAT and had done a lot of law enforcement stuff too. So
yeah, and that's I mean, I know you talked on the first episode about being a Christian, and I don't know how much you read or whether you read the Bible at all, but some of the books that were kept out talks about the fallen angels, and that is, it's another thing that's just we've talked about this, but all these rumors, and they all seem far-fetched, or they all seem
Right.
crazy, but they also all could be accurate. Any one of those things could be accurate. So yeah, that's interesting.
So is he? I'm not super familiar with that video specifically, but is he saying they're like the Nephilim basically, or is he saying it's is he saying it's the Nephilim, which is like the children of the fallen angels and man, right?
Mhm.
Is he saying that they're that, or is he saying that they're actually fallen angels? That's what I didn't
I guess
understand.
I don't know. I didn't understand whether he's saying it's the children or the fallen
Right.
angels themselves. And maybe another video, or we can read up and find out, and probably should have for this. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't know which one he did. Either way,
Right.
I mean, whether it's children of the fallen angel, the Nephilim, or the actual fallen angels, is very interesting. It's just I don't know. There's probably not a lot of people who would immediately draw that conclusion.
Right.
So to have somebody so well read or so well educated and experienced come to that conclusion, I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really hard, I think, especially for a guy like that, where he's kind of like dedicated the latter half of his life to researching this stuff, and people have their gripes with Polides, like whether, he's doing this for the right reasons or not, or whatever. Everybody has a critic. But he's put tons of time into this. Nobody can take that away from him. I think it would be really hard to do that and not look at this from any possible angle. Like,
Right.
even the most unlikely, like even if, somebody were to say that, Bigfoot being a fallen angel is the most unlikely possible outcome, you'd still have to look at it because these cases don't make any sense at all. Like it wouldn't make sense to not look at it from even all the supernatural, different explanations. So it definitely opens the mind up a little bit.
And I don't think he's because if you keep watching the video, he talks about feral humans.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I think he's talking about that being a possibility. I don't think that's his final conclusion.
Right.
But it's just one of the discussion points. And the feral human beings. Have you looked much into that stuff?
I haven't been super in depth lately.
Yeah.
But I got really into it probably 2 years ago, and I did a lot of research, and that is one thing that is definitely correlated to state parks. There is the Mark Twain National Forest. I believe that's in either Arkansas or Missouri. It's down in the Ozarks. And there's tons of stories from down there. And it's usually like a tall, pale, naked, hairy dude. Like no clothing on, hairy, like bushman looking, and almost always, creepily enough, crawling on all fours.
Yeah.
Which that's the part about the feral humans that gets me. Because I was like, even if you were feral, why would you still not use bipedal locomotion? Like you'd think that would be an advantage. But
yeah, I mean, and maybe it has to do with the whole nature versus nurture.
Mhm.
Every wild animal that he encounters out there is probably on all four.
Right.
And also maybe how long has he been feral? His whole life?
Mhm.
Or did he? Is he one of the guys that went missing in a national park, bumped his head, forgot who he
Right.
was?
What a fucking way to go. I mean, also, are we sure that the feral humans are humans?
Right.
That's the thing that has always bothered me about it. A lot of people kind of like poo-poo the cryptozoological stuff, but I mean, I think if you have your mind open enough to even like talk about Bigfoot, I think you also have to talk about other potential hominins that might be out there too. Or, like I said, in the metaphysical way, could be some kind of demon, could be like a Native American spirit. And it's interesting how like the Native Americans, when they talk about things like skinwalkers and some of the other they're like evil spirits of yesteryear, they have a lot in common with like a traditional Christian like demon.
Yeah.
And I think people for the longest time didn't really look too deeply into the similarities between those two, but it makes me wonder often if we're talking about a common negative spirit that really does exist, and it's just described slightly differently depending on what religion you are, what your ethnicity and background is. So it could be something like that. It could be like like the jinn. A jinn
Right.
sounds very similar in description to what a feral human would look like.
Yeah, and that to me that makes sense in my brain because you look over all of Earth and you'll see ancient, very similar architecture and all that stuff. So
Yep.
so yeah, that makes sense. If they were that's how they describe what they saw.
Right.
That they're describing their experience. They just use different words. So that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well, and all these, it's so funny how, you get things like pyramids, right? We've talked about the pyramids before. I'm sure we'll do our own separate episode on that at some point too, because
Yeah.
that's a whole thing. But how is it that there's pyramids in Central and South America, all the way out in Africa? I mean, all over the world. And then you've got your mound builders in North America that always wanted to be, and some of those actually are very pyramid-like too. And you've got the Chinese pyramid. Have you seen these? The Chinese pyramids? How basically the Chinese planted a shit ton of trees on top of them because they wanted to hide them. How is it that this same structure or very similar structure has originated throughout all these various different populations of humans thousands of miles away when supposedly they had no way to contact each other or to share this information and culture with each other? It's crazy.
Yeah. Yes, I think my conclusion is like our history is just a story. I think the timeline's way off. In my mind, I believe that we've probably as a species reset several times on Earth.
Yeah.
And I think we've probably had technology far beyond what we can imagine right now.
Like Atlantis stuff.
Yeah. That's just how I feel. I mean, I can't remember where it is, but it's at it's some museum next to one of the pyramids. Maybe it's in Egypt. I'm not really sure. But they talk about the first thing you see when you walk in is a block. And it's like, oh, this is a block they carved. And most people, I wish I could remember the name of it. Most people walk by it because it's the least interesting looking thing. And they don't take the time to go around back. And if you go around and look at the back of the block, what you see is what looks like either like a laser mark. The cut's not finished.
That's crazy.
And how clean it is. And and it's like 36 inches, this block, or something like that.
Right.
And so you see this cut going, halfway through it. And then we're told it was done with, chisels.
Copper chisels or bronze, maybe bronze,
Yeah.
Which if you've worked with either one of those materials, they're not real hard.
No, those are the materials you use to clean steel.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't seem like logical that you should be able to cut like a 10-ton block with copper. Like that just doesn't make sense to my brain. But
yeah, it's frustrating because, I think just as human beings, way off topic, and that's okay. We're curious in nature. We want to know all the mysteries of the universe. Who doesn't, And so you wonder why, because I do believe a lot of our actual history is hidden from us. And I wonder why. What's the agenda, And that's a huge rabbit hole.
right.
But
and it makes you think too, like if it is being hidden by, there's 197 countries in the world, and all of them, presumably all of their governments have some level of knowledge about this, if that is the case, and they're all coordinating together on one thing, which has never been able to be done before in human history. It would have to be something greater than, a larger purpose, if they're all coordinating and are all able to keep the secret and are all actively covering it up. It's
like some
really,
northern cold place you're thinking of.
yeah. Yeah, it's almost unbelievable to me. And I'm not saying that is what's happening, but if it is, it's the greatest conspiracy in human history.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree. Why are they trying to keep that from regular people? Are they nervous about the reaction? Because they say the same thing about disclosure for UFOs, like we talked about last week. all the excuses that you hear from these government people when they, come out, and you get like a Lou Elizondo or whatever, who always will say, oh, I wish I could tell you more, but I have this security oath and everything. And my thought is always like, fuck the security oath. If this is like the greatest secret in mankind and you're trying to do the right thing, like, I don't understand why that would take precedent over that.
Is Lou Elizondo I think I'm sure I know I've heard the name before, and I'm pretty sure I know what he looks like, but is he the guy that also recently started talking about how he's building a bunker?
I
Like a
don't know if
doomsday
I've
bunker?
seen that, but it wouldn't surprise me because all these guys are building bunkers now. But
Yeah. I mean, if you knew something, I mean, with what you're talking about, if you knew something that was like, I don't know, like just worldview changing,
right,
to play that game of this is what I can tell you, it, either A, it's really not going to change shit. It's just a form of control or whatever, because if it were going to change things permanently, what do you care about your security oath? What does that matter?
I guarantee you there's a way he could get his message across while still honoring his security oath.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell government secrets per se to be able to get the message across to people about what they need to do to prepare for said coming event, I think.
Yeah, and I guess, that's easy for us on our soapbox to say this,
right,
because we don't understand. Well, we can theorize about, the people who are watching him keep those secrets, and I'm sure, he's thinking of his family's safety and all that stuff. But the big man behind the computer, I'm with you. I'd be like, fuck your securities. I'm telling the world.
Right.
Especially if you have, he's very well known. People, when you see a video, I stop scrolling. I want to hear what he has to say.
Well, and he's not actively in anymore either. That's the other thing. Like, if you're currently in the CIA or the DI or whatever, I get it, right? Like, you have to support your family.
Yeah.
But he's been gone for years now. What, like half a decade or more? Like, I don't know. It's hard for me, and it's stuff like that makes me really think, not that the whole UFO thing is a psyop, but that a lot of it is.
Yeah.
A lot of it is. You ever hear the story about Richard Doty?
Refresh my memory.
So, basically, he lived near a base. I want to say it was like Nellis. It was an Air Force testing base. And he had been seeing them do test flights of like RSR-71 Blackbirds, the U-2 spy plane. And he was seeing like weird lights in the sky and stuff. And he was also intercepting radio transmissions. And he was like sure that these were aliens, right? So he went to the local base and reported it. He was a patriot. He was actually a government contractor, and he worked for the base. And he was trying to be a patriotic American and do the right thing, because he thought like, oh shit, we're going to get invaded by aliens or something. And he went to the base, and the base referred him to a guy who actually ended up being like a CIA asset, or he may have been Army intelligence. He was in intelligence in some aspect. And that guy, basically worked him like a source, and told him exactly what he wanted to hear, and said, hey, you're right, these are aliens, like, thank you so much, you're helping your country, you're a great patriot. And did this for years, and like fed this dude all this false information. And the guy would go, and then he would talk about this stuff in like online forums and various groups. And it was like the government's way of injecting lies into the UFO community. And the dude ended up killing himself. Like, it was, and it's like this huge controversy even today about like, how could you possibly do that? That's like so evil. But nothing really with the government surprises me anymore. But you talk about psyops, and I'm like, the fact that came out, that was true, I just don't really doubt the capability of the government to do anything anymore after that.
That's really messed up. Like, I'm glad you shared that story. I know I haven't heard that one before. And again, we're going to stick with our theme with this podcast, and we're going to go way off topic, and that's okay. But, it makes me think, and I've heard this quite a bit lately, and this is how I feel. With these psyops and all this stuff going on, I really truly believe that it's you know, you can go, it's left, it's right, it's whatever political affiliation you think you're a part of, but it's really good versus evil. You know, the people who are, you know, condemning your speech or whatever the case, depending on, you know, where you live. Like over in Europe, I know there's a lot of free speech, hate speech regulations, and all this other stuff that to me is just mind blowing. But yeah, I think it's you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's just good versus evil for a lot of this stuff.
Right. And I do have to correct myself, actually. Richard Doty was the CIA guy. The gentleman's name was Paul Benowitz.
Oh, okay.
I was
Paul
wrong
Benowitz.
on, just to correct the record on that. Paul Benowitz was the guy that was the government contractor that worked for the base. Richard Doty was the intelligence asset. So,
What you, do you say this was in the 70s?
let me look at the exact year. I have the article pulled up right now. I think it was a little later than that, but I could be wrong. It was in the early 80s. So Benowitz started his investigation in 1980, and then Doty got involved in a disinformation campaign in 81.
That's messed up.
Yeah, and then I want to say it was only a couple of years after that Doty offed himself. So this whole thing transpired in the course of like 3 years, 2-3 years. But I mean, even if the guy, which there's varying reports about whether Benowitz already had like pre-existing mental
Right.
health stuff, but even if he doesn't, like if you have somebody, and back then, like in the 80s, you know, this is still post Watergate, so like people are a little bit more skeptical of their government, right? Like post JFK, post Watergate, but you're still, I mean, this is almost 50 years ago. People still had a lot more trust in their government than they do now. So you get a government official telling you like, "Oh, thank you so much for this information. Like we're so fortunate that you saw this stuff. We're going to recruit you to help us fight these aliens." Like I totally understand how a guy would be like, "Oh, like this is huge. Like I got to even somebody with their full mental capacity at that point, cuz like a lot of this stuff about the terrible stuff the CIA and our government had done hadn't come out yet. It was still classified."
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's really sad, dude. And I mean, there's so much other stuff. Like, I'm sure we'll do an episode at some point about, like, a lot of the crazy, terrible things the CIA has done. Like, we can do a whole episode on the CIA, but...
Yeah, as we were talking about this, I thought of a story that I'd heard, and it's probably worth doing an episode on it if we can find enough information, but it's about I without looking at it, I don't remember where it is, but, you know, South America, maybe somewhere, the face peelers.
Oh, yeah. Is that related to the Virginia case, or is that I can't remember if that's a separate deal.
I don't know.
But yeah, it is South America. I remember you're right.
I heard, you know, just kind of like the overview. You know, somebody, like, these are like villages, you know, like very small villages. And this person got almost like when I visualize it in my head, when I listen to the story, it reminds me of the Green Goblin on his glider.
Yep.
But these people came down and basically grabbed this woman, and there was 2 of them, and started rubbing cream on her face.
I heard this, yeah.
And then use, you know, basically they're going to take her face and steal her face. That's crazy, you know, like what the hell kind of technology do we actually have in this world? You know, that's bonkers.
Right. And is that an actual like spirit or alien, or is that like some government official like conducting a that's science experiment, right?
That's a good point, you know, because for me, I think my mind automatically goes to, you know, that's us. That sounds something evil, so it's probably something a human's doing, you know, like so I automatically think it's and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's a spirit or whatever, you know, but
well, what would an alien want with a human face?
What would a human want with a human's face?
I mean, humans are inherently evil though in a lot of ways, so
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, man, but it's crazy to think about. And I think a lot of people fall really hard into one camp or the other.
Yeah.
Like they're like, "Oh, it's got to be an alien, it's got to be an evil spirit, whatever." And there's people that are like, "Oh, it's all the government. There's nothing mystical in the world, yada yada." And it's got to be somewhere in the middle, I think.
But both things can be true.
Right. Well, like with the UFO thing, like just because the government probably does have reverse engineered craft, or Lockheed Martin does, or Northrop Grumman does, doesn't mean that, you know, a lot of the alien stuff isn't also true. Like they probably got that technology from somewhere.
Right.
So it's you can't really say they're all both false. It's got to be some combination of the two in a lot of this stuff, right? Like a lot of the legends, like go back to Bigfoot. A lot of the legends came from somewhere. They didn't just randomly make this up, most likely. Like they, you know, the Native Americans had experiences, and people still have experiences today, you know, hundreds or thousands of years later. So something is there, something's happening. There's too many reports, too much anecdotal evidence where there's just nothing happening.
Yeah, right. Well, that's probably good for this week, huh?
Yeah, I think we touched on pretty much everything. Let's do a quick look over.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I think we're probably good. We've got a couple of ideas on deck already for next week. So we're going to try, I just wanted to tell the listeners here, we're going to try to keep it pretty steady between like 45 minutes and an hour, I think is kind of what we're shooting for. And we're going to shoot for one episode a week. I am not going to release, since we just started, I'm not going to release these episodes until we've got like 2 or 3 in the bank, so I can put those out, and then we can kind of get on a schedule of doing like once a week, and maybe if we get a wild hair, we'll do 2, or if we have an extra time off. But obviously both of us have full-time jobs and families and lives, so, you know,
if as I say, you know, for the audience, if you hadn't, you know, noticed by now, this might not be the podcast for you if you want people to stay on task. We,
yeah,
you know, we write up notes or whatever, but you know, you can't really stay on task when you're talking about conspiracies because all this shit's tied together. It seems like so.
Oh, dude, it's all fucking. There literally is a conspiracy theory called like everything's connected, right?
Yeah,
like you get like the fucking Charlie from It's Always Sunny with all the dots connected on the pegboard, you know?
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's kind of how some of this stuff is. And it's really easy to theoretically connect a lot of this stuff. So it's hard to not talk about it if
Right.
you know the possibilities there if you're doing this in good conscience. But yeah, no, I think we can wrap it up here for today. Appreciate all you guys listening and maybe watching if you're watching on YouTube or the video on Spotify. But we definitely appreciate it. And if you have any ideas for episodes, definitely reach out. I will link my email or the show's email in the show notes. So if you guys want to send us anything, if there's anything new that you want to hear, please, you know, give us a shout out, send it up. But just definitely appreciate all the support so far. So thank you guys.
All right. Thank you.
But the burden of shadows is ahead.